years, Officers Rickman and Hardy acted like Cypress Bayou was their own domain. Every so-called trespasser was just another black resident to intimidate and control. Every challenge met with harsh force and fear tactics. But when they arrested a quiet black man sitting on his own porch, they assumed he was just another powerless target, another warning to the community. They never stopped to ask who he truly was. They couldn't have imagined they were about to confront the director of the FBI himself. Now, as tensions rise and the town watches closely, they're about to discover what real justice looks like. Before we dive deeper, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you absolutely can't miss. The morning sun stretched long shadows across the worn streets of Cypress Bayou as Dr. Malcolm Everett's sleek black sedan rolled to a stop. The gravel crunched softly beneath his polished shoes as he stepped out, his brown trench coat catching the gentle breeze. The familiar sense of magnolia and damp earth filled his lungs. Some things never change. His childhood home stood quietly before him, white paint peeling here and there, porch steps weathered by countless footsteps. Malcolm's fingers tightened around his keys as he noticed curtains twitching, faces appearing briefly in windows like fleeting ghosts, watching the stranger who wasn't really a stranger at all. 25 years, he whispered, climbing the creaky steps. The key slid into the lock with stubborn resistance, as if the house itself needed convincing. The door creaked open, releasing a wave of stale air and memories. Dust motes danced in shafts of morning light, and his footsteps echoed through rooms that felt smaller than he remembered. The faded wallpaper, his mother's choice, had softened into gentle pastels. On the living room wall, family photos hung exactly where he remembered. His father's proud smile frozen in time, his mother's kind eyes still watching over the quiet house. Malcolm picked up a framed photo from the mantel, brushing away years of dust with his thumb. It showed a younger version of himself standing between his parents at his high school graduation. "I made it, Mama," he whispered softly, "just like you always said I would." A gentle knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Through the screen, he saw Mrs. Edna Willis, her silver hair glowing in the morning light. Her warm smile carried the weight of many years, though her eyes held a cautious spark. "Lord have mercy, if it isn't little Malcolm Everett," she said, voice thick with memories. "Though I guess I can't call you little anymore." Malcolm opened the screen door, greeting her with a respectful nod. "Mrs. Willis, you haven't aged a day." She waved off the compliment, but couldn't hide her pleasure. "Don't try that sweet talk with me, boy. I've known you since you were knee-high to a grasshopper." Her smile faded as she leaned closer, lowering her voice. "But what brings you back after all this time?" Malcolm motioned to the porch swing, and they sat together as the old chains creaked in rhythm. "It was time," he said simply. "The house needed care, and maybe the neighborhood does too." Mrs. Willis's face darkened. "Things aren't what they used to be, Malcolm. These new officers they brought in, they're not like Officer Jones from back in the day. They don't know us. They don't want to know us." She lowered her voice further. "The Jacksons 3 doors down. They left last month. The bank said they missed payments, but Mariah Jackson never missed one in her life. And before them, the Browns and the Washingtons." Malcolm listened closely, his mind already piecing together every detail. "How long has this been going on?" "Almost 2 years now," Mrs. Willis replied. "Ever since that new development company started buying up land." She straightened her dress. "People are scared, Malcolm, and those who speak out, they usually find themselves in trouble with these new officers." Malcolm's voice stayed calm, though his jaw tightened slightly. "Thank you for telling me, Mrs. Willis. I may have some questions later, if that's all right." "You always were curious," she said, rising slowly. "Just be careful, Malcolm. This isn't the town you left." She patted his shoulder and made her way down the steps, her cane tapping a steady rhythm. Malcolm spent the next hour unpacking his essentials, clothes, toiletries, and a few personal items. He found his father's old coffee maker in the kitchen, cleaned it thoroughly, and soon the rich aroma of fresh coffee filled the house, pushing back the mustiness. With a steaming mug in hand, Malcolm settled into a wooden chair on the porch. The sun was fully risen now, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. He sipped his coffee, watching early joggers pass by, some quickening their pace when they noticed him. The quiet morning was suddenly broken by the distant rumble of engines. 2 police cruisers appeared at the end of the street, moving deliberately slow. Their white paint gleamed in the sunlight, parish emblems clear on their doors. Malcolm met their gaze calmly as they crawled past his house, their faces hard and suspicious. He raised his coffee mug slightly, a silent gesture, maybe a greeting, maybe a challenge. The officers didn't respond. Their eyes locked on him as they passed, their pace just slow enough to announce their presence. Malcolm took another slow sip, expression unchanging. The coffee had cooled, but he didn't mind. He had all the time in the world to watch, to learn, and to prepare. The police cruisers vanished around the corner, but their message hung heavy in the morning air. The late morning sun beat down as Malcolm stood on his porch, carefully wiping decades of grime from an old brass house number. His father had mounted it proudly when they first moved in. Determined, Malcolm methodically polished the metal with slow, deliberate strokes, his brown trench coat growing warm under the rising heat, but staying firmly on. Suddenly, the growl of a police cruiser's engine stopped right in front of his house. Malcolm froze, but didn't turn around. Heavy car doors slammed, boots crunched on gravel, and tension filled the air like static before a storm. "Hey you, what do you think you're doing?" A sharp, aggressive voice cut through the quiet. Malcolm slowly turned to face 2 officers, both white, both young, with hands resting on their belts. The one who spoke wore a crew cut and a permanent sneer. His name tag read, Rickman. "Good morning, officers," Malcolm said calmly, setting down his cleaning supplies. "Is there something I can assist you with?" Rickman stepped forward, aggressive. "We've had reports of suspicious activity. This is private property. Explain what you're doing here." "I'm cleaning my house number," Malcolm replied evenly, gesturing to the polished brass numerals. "This is my property." The second officer, Hardy, let out a derisive laugh. "Your property, huh? Let's see some ID." Across the street, Malcolm noticed movement, curtains twitching, faces appearing, phones raised. Maintaining eye contact, he slowly reached into his coat pocket. "Hands where we can see them," Rickman barked, his hand moving toward his weapon. "Both hands up, now." Malcolm raised his hands carefully, keeping calm despite the anger building inside. "My ID is in my inner coat pocket. I'm reaching for it slowly." "Just hurry up," Hardy snapped, moving to flank him. Deliberately, Malcolm retrieved his wallet and extended it. Rickman snatched it, flipping it open with clear disdain. His eyes narrowed as he read aloud. "This says Malcolm Everett. You expect us to believe this is your house?" "It is my house," Malcolm replied firmly. "I inherited it from my parents. The deed is inside." Rickman cut him off abruptly. "If you'd be quiet, this ID could be fake. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Malcolm stood firm, voice steady but quiet. "Officers, I understand you're doing your job, but this is my property. I have every right to—" Without warning, Rickman grabbed Malcolm's arm and slammed him face first against the wall. Pain shot through Malcolm's cheek as rough siding scraped his skin. Gasps rose from the gathering neighbors. "Stop resisting!" Rickman yelled. Though Malcolm hadn't moved, cold metal bit into his wrists as handcuffs clicked shut, tightened far more than necessary. "I'm not resisting," Malcolm said through clenched teeth as Rickman twisted his arm painfully. "This arrest is unlawful, and you're using excessive force." "Oh, look who knows the law," Hardy sneered, roughly frisking Malcolm. "You can explain that downtown." Across the street, Mrs. Willis stepped onto her porch, her voice cutting through the tension. "Leave him alone. That's Dr. Everett. This is his home." "Ma'am, stay back or you'll be next," Rickman warned, shoving Malcolm toward the stairs. Malcolm stumbled but kept his balance, dignity intact despite the humiliation burning inside. More neighbors gathered now, phones recording every moment. "This isn't right!" someone shouted. "We're watching you, officers," another voice called out. "Everyone back inside," Hardy commanded, hand on his weapon. "This is police business." Malcolm was marched to the patrol car, Rickman's grip bruisingly tight on his arm. The officer forced his head down as he shoved him into the back seat. The door slammed shut with a heavy thud. Through the window, Malcolm saw Mrs. Willis standing firm on her porch, phone raised high, her face a mask of righteous fury. Clusters of neighbors formed small groups, some filming, others shouting protests. A young mother pulled her children back inside, face tight with familiar fear. "You're making a serious mistake," Malcolm said quietly from the back seat. "Shut your mouth," Rickman snapped, starting the engine. "You'll have plenty of time to talk at the station." The patrol car pulled away, leaving behind a chorus of angry voices. Mrs. Willis's shout rose above the rest. "We're calling everyone, you hear me? Everyone!" "Threaten all you want, old woman," Hardy yelled back through the open window. "Next person who interferes gets arrested for obstruction." The car sped down the street, carrying Malcolm away from his childhood home for the second time, but this time in handcuffs. Officer Rickman's grip remained painfully firm as he marched Malcolm through the double doors of the Cypress Bayou Police Department. The harsh fluorescent lights cast long shadows on the scuffed linoleum floors, marking Malcolm's once pristine trench coat with new stains, signs of a day that would change everything. The morning shift officers glanced up from their desks, some smirking, others avoiding eye contact. "Look who we caught trespassing on Oak Street," Rickman announced with a proud shove, pushing Malcolm toward the booking desk. "City slicker," he thought. "Thinks he can just stroll onto someone's property." Malcolm stood tall despite the uncomfortable pinch of the handcuffs. "I'd like to contact my lawyer now," he said calmly, his voice cutting through the suddenly hushed room. Hardy let out an exaggerated laugh. "Oh, you hear that? Lawyer talk already." He leaned in close to Malcolm's ear. "Listen here, friend. City slickers like you always get put in their place around Cypress Bayou. Might want to remember that." The booking sergeant, a heavy-set man with yellowed teeth, slowly shuffled papers. "Name?" he drawled, even though Malcolm's ID was right there in front of him. "Dr. Malcolm Everett," Malcolm replied evenly, "and I'm formally requesting my phone call." Rickman sneered, yanking the cuffs tighter. "Awfully demanding for someone caught breaking and entering. Maybe a few hours in holding will teach you some manners." Malcolm didn't flinch. "The law requires you to allow me a phone call. Also, you've yet to read me my rights or properly document the reason for my arrest." The sergeant's face darkened. "You some kind of lawyer?" "No," Malcolm said firmly. "Just a citizen who knows his rights. Now about that phone call." Hardy grabbed a clipboard and started writing down notes. Suspect showed aggressive behavior during arrest, resisted officers' commands, demonstrated hostile attitude toward law enforcement. "That's not what happened," Malcolm said firmly. "There are multiple witnesses and video evidence to prove it." Rickman sneered. "Your word against ours. Who do you think people believe around here?" Suddenly, a heavy door slammed. The atmosphere shifted as Chief Ray Dalton strode in, his large frame wrapped in a poorly fitted uniform, face flushed from heat or anger. "What's all this about?" Dalton demanded, eyes narrowing on Malcolm. "Caught this one trespassing on Oak Street, Chief," Rickman said eagerly, getting real mouthy about his rights. Dalton circled Malcolm slowly, like a predator sizing up prey. "Nice neighborhood," Dalton muttered. "Too nice for some folks, if you catch my meaning." Malcolm met his gaze steadily. "Chief Dalton, I presume. I'm still waiting for my phone call. Also, Officer Rickman's body cam appears to be turned off, violating department policy, Section 8.4, Paragraph 3. The chief's face twitched. "You seem awfully familiar with police procedure," Malcolm said. "I make it my business to know the law." He glanced at the booking sheet. "Also, I noticed they've listed the wrong address on that form. The property is 1242 Oak Street, not 1224. A small detail, but important for the record." Dalton snatched the form, scowling. Get him his damn phone call, then we'll see about teaching him some respect for local authority. Malcolm was led to a grimy phone mounted on the wall. He dialed from memory, steady fingers despite the cuffs. This is Malcolm Everett. I'm at the Cypress Bayou Police Department. Yes, thank you. He hung up and turned to his captors. Shall we proceed with booking? Dalton growled. Think you're real smart, don't you? We'll see how smart you feel after a night in holding. Malcolm allowed himself to be led to a small cell. The cold metal bench was uncomfortable, but he sat perfectly upright, expression unshaken. He heard Rickman and Hardy laughing with other officers down the hall. City boy's gonna learn. Should have stayed where he came from. Chief will straighten him out. Minutes passed. Malcolm used the time to mentally record every detail, badge numbers, timestamps, procedural violations. The chief's voice boomed through the station, planning what sounded like a press conference about maintaining order in the community. Then a phone rang. The station fell silent except for the chief's voice, now uncertain. Yes, sir. I understand, sir. But we had no way of... Yes, sir. Right away, sir. Malcolm watched through the cell bars as Chief Dalton's face drained of color. The man's hands shook as he lowered the phone, eyes darting nervously toward the holding cell. Fear. Dalton stood frozen, sweat beading on his forehead, staring at Malcolm as if seeing him for the first time. The power dynamic had shifted so dramatically even the other officers could feel it, their earlier bravado dissolving into stunned silence. Within the hour, the station buzzed with nervous energy. Dalton's meaty hand trembled as he unlocked Malcolm's cell, his swagger replaced by a pale, sickly posture. My office, now, he muttered, avoiding Malcolm's steady gaze. Malcolm straightened his trench coat and followed Dalton down the corridor. Officers who had laughed earlier now pressed themselves against the walls, faces masks of uncertainty. Through the glass walls of Dalton's office, multiple phones rang simultaneously. The office, a shrine to Dalton's authority, was lined with awards, commendations, and photos of him shaking hands with politicians. Now he slumped behind his desk, dabbing his forehead with a handkerchief, juggling calls on speakerphone. Yes, Director Matthews, I understand the severity. Dalton's voice cracked. We had no idea Dr. Everett was... A sharp voice cut through the speaker. That's FBI Director Everett to you, Chief Dalton. Do you realize the magnitude of your department's actions today? Malcolm sat quietly, hands folded calmly in his lap, watching Dalton squirm under the weight of the statement. On another line, the State Attorney General's voice boomed through the room. Chief, you'd better pray those officers had their body cams on. We're sending a team immediately to collect all footage and documentation. Sir? Dalton stammered nervously. There might have been some technical difficulties with the cameras. Technical difficulties? The Attorney General's tone could have frozen fire. Like the technical difficulties in the Johnson case and the Williams case? We'll be reviewing those too, Chief. Suddenly, Officer Rickman burst into the office, his face flushed red. Chief, the media's outside. They're saying... His voice died as he spotted Malcolm sitting calmly in the chair. Officer Rickman, Malcolm spoke for the first time, his voice quiet, but carrying undeniable authority. I believe you have some paperwork to complete regarding this morning's incident. I'm particularly interested in your explanation for the excessive force used during my arrest. Rickman stumbled back, nearly tripping over his own feet. Outside, camera flashes began to light up the parking lot. Effective immediately, the FBI director's voice commanded through the speaker. Officers Rickman and Hardy are suspended, pending a full federal investigation. Chief Dalton, your department will provide full cooperation. Director Everett has our complete support in this matter. Malcolm rose, adjusting his cuffs. I'll need my personal effects returned, Chief. And I understand a state trooper is waiting to escort me home. Dalton's face was a battlefield of fear, anger, and the desperate calculations of a man watching his power crumble. Director Everett, he muttered, perhaps we could discuss this privately. All discussions will be properly documented through official channels, Malcolm replied firmly. I'm sure you understand the importance of following procedure. The walk through the station felt like a reversal of his earlier march. Officers who had smirked, now stared at their shoes. The booking sergeant frantically shuffled papers, trying to conceal the falsified arrest report. Outside, the morning sun blazed higher. State Trooper Williams, a young black officer, stood at attention by his cruiser. "Director Everett, sir. I'm here to escort you home." As they drove down Oak Street, Malcolm saw neighbors gathering. Mrs. Willis stood on her porch, phone in hand, spreading the news. "That's right, baby. FBI director. They picked the wrong one this time." The cruiser stopped at Malcolm's house, the site of the morning's drama. Children peeked out from behind their parents. Mrs. Johnson, who had filmed the arrest, rushed forward with his phone. "Sir, I got it all on video, every second." "Thank you," Malcolm said, addressing the growing crowd. "That kind of documentation matters. It's time for things to change in Cypress Bayou." Throughout the afternoon, neighbors stopped by, some bringing food, others sharing stories of their own run-ins with Dalton's department. Hope echoed in their voices, the hope that finally someone would listen. As evening settled, Malcolm sat on his porch, the same spot where he'd been arrested that morning. The street was quiet, filled only with the chirp of crickets and distant laughter of children playing. His coffee had grown cold, but he didn't mind. A pickup truck crawled by, engine growling low. Its headlights swept across the porch, lingering longer than necessary. Malcolm took another sip of coffee, posture relaxed but eyes alert, as he watched the truck disappear around the corner. Mrs. Willis called from next door. "Need anything, Director Everett?" "I'm fine, Mrs. Willis," he replied, voice carrying softly in the evening air. "Just enjoying being home." The porch light cast a warm glow. Malcolm could see neighbors sitting out too, keeping watch, sharing this moment of possibility. The tide wasn't just turning, it had already shifted, and everyone could feel it. The grandfather clock in Malcolm's hallway struck midnight, its deep chimes echoing through the quiet house. Sleep eluded him as his mind replayed the day's events. He walked the familiar rooms, fingers tracing walls his father had painted decades ago. A cool breeze brushed his face. Something wasn't right. All the windows were closed. Malcolm froze. The living room ahead was dark, but a deep unease settled over him. He reached for the light switch, and his stomach dropped. The room was destroyed, papers scattered, photo albums torn apart, his mother's antique vase shattered on the floor. Someone had ransacked every drawer and cabinet, leaving chaos in their wake. On the coffee table, weighed down by a broken picture frame, lay a note written in thick black marker. "Leave or else." Malcolm pulled out his phone, documenting the damage. His FBI training kicked in as he surveyed the scene, noting entry points, patterns in the destruction. The back window lock had been expertly jimmied. This wasn't the work of a random vandal, but someone who knew exactly what they were doing. As Malcolm bent to gather the scattered papers, something caught his eye beneath the couch. A small black device, barely larger than a quarter, with a tiny blinking light. His jaw clenched. A listening bug, a sophisticated one. Someone wanted to hear every word spoken in this room. Suddenly, glass shattered inward as a brick crashed through the front window. Malcolm dropped to the floor, instincts kicking in. Through the broken glass, he caught a glimpse of a figure in dark clothing darting across his lawn. "Not today," Malcolm muttered, launching himself toward the door. His feet pounded down the porch steps as he chased the shadow. The masked intruder was fast, but Malcolm's longer strides closed the gap. Just as he reached out to grab the jacket, the figure vaulted over Mrs. Willis's fence and disappeared into the night. Lights flicked on next door. "Malcolm! Malcolm!" Mrs. Willis called. "I'm calling the police." "Stay inside, Mrs. Willis," Malcolm shouted back, eyes scanning the darkness. Police sirens wailed in the distance, but Malcolm felt no relief. Minutes later, Officers Peterson and Martinez arrived, taking their time exiting the cruiser. "Well, well," Peterson drawled, shining his flashlight deliberately into Malcolm's eyes. "Having trouble settling in, Director?" Malcolm calmly recounted the break-in, the bug, the masked figure. Martinez took notes with a smirk that said he didn't expect anything to come of it. "Probably just kids," Peterson shrugged, barely glancing at the damage. "You know how they get with new neighbors." Suddenly, a car door slammed in the driveway. Councilwoman Anita Rhodes strode toward them, her face tight with concern. Malcolm remembered her from high school, a lifelong fighter for justice. "Officers," she said sharply, "I trust you're conducting a thorough investigation." "Just wrapping up, ma'am," Martinez replied, already heading back to the cruiser. "Nothing to see here." Once the police left, Anita grabbed Malcolm's arm, her voice urgent. Inside now, her eyes scanned the street for any movement. In the ransacked living room, Anita pulled a folded paper from her jacket. "This isn't random, Malcolm, look." She spread the paper on the table, a typed list of names. His was at the top, marked with a red X. "Where did you get this?" Malcolm asked, studying the document. "I have sources in City Hall," Anita whispered. "Everyone on this list has challenged the power structure here. Some have disappeared, others had accidents, and some just gave up and left town." She gripped his arm tightly. "Malcolm, these people play for keeps. They've had decades to perfect their system." Malcolm thought of his arrest earlier that morning. "It wasn't just overzealous cops, was it? They knew exactly who I was." Anita nodded gravely. "They wanted to send a message, but it backfired, and now they're scared." "Please, Malcolm," she urged. "You need to leave. They'll keep escalating." "Until what?" Malcolm's voice was quiet but firm. "Until another family loses their home. Until another innocent person is arrested, or worse." Malcolm shook his head. "No, Anita, I'm not running." Outside, the sky began to lighten, the first gray hints of dawn filtering through the broken window. Malcolm sat at his kitchen table, examining the listening device under a desk lamp. Beside him lay a growing list of names: Chief Dalton, the mayor, prominent business owners, anyone with power to lose. Anita watched him work, her face a mixture of admiration and fear. "They'll come after your reputation next," she warned. "They'll dig up anything and make up what they can't find." Malcolm's pen moved steadily across the paper. "Let them try. Sometimes the only way to fight darkness is to drag it into the light." The bug's circuitry gleamed under the lamp, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. Malcolm reached for his coffee, hands steady despite the long night. The warning note lay crumpled nearby, its threat no longer a demand to leave, but a promise of his determination to stay and fight. Later, in Councilwoman Anita Rhodes's office, the morning sun cast long shadows through Venetian blinds. Malcolm sat in a worn leather chair, his brown trench coat draped over the back, watching as Anita pulled file after file from a locked cabinet behind her desk. "I've been collecting these for years," she said, dropping a thick stack of manila folders onto her desk. "Every complaint that came to me, I made copies. Originals always seemed to disappear from official records." Malcolm leaned forward, opening the first folder. Inside were dozens of handwritten complaints against the police department. Excessive force, illegal searches, harassment. Many stamped with red, dismissed, or no action required. "Look at this one," Anita said, pulling out a report. "Mrs. Jackson, 72 years old, thrown to the ground during a welfare check. When she tried to complain, they threatened to arrest her grandson on drug charges." Malcolm's jaw tightened as he read. "The responding officers? Rickman and Hardy, the same ones who arrested you," Anita confirmed. "They're new to the force, but learned the system fast. Young, aggressive, and ready to follow the chief's orders without question." Anita pulled out a map of Cypress Bayou. Red dots marked dozens of properties throughout the historically black neighborhoods, each representing a family who lost their home in the last 5 years. "Notice anything?" Malcolm studied the pattern. "They're all within 3 blocks of the proposed highway expansion." "Exactly," Anita said, spreading out more documents: foreclosure notices, eviction orders, property liens. "The mayor's office calls it a coincidence, but look at the signatures." Malcolm pulled out his reading glasses and examined the papers closely. "These notary stamps, they're identical. Not similar. Identical. Someone's using a photocopied stamp." Anita pointed out, "Notice how some of the processing dates are Sundays when government offices are closed." A knock at the door made them both look up. A young black man in his late 20s stood in the doorway, laptop bag over his shoulder, press badge hanging from his neck. "Corey Johnson," he introduced himself, stepping forward to shake Malcolm's hand. "I write for the Cypress Bayou Chronicle. What's left of it anyway?" Anita explained. "Corey's been working this story for months. He's the only reporter in town willing to touch it. More like the only one they haven't bought off yet," Corey said, pulling out his laptop. "But they're trying. Last week, my editor killed a story about suspicious property transfers. Said it wasn't newsworthy." Malcolm watched as Corey pulled up a spreadsheet. "What have you found?" "The pattern goes back decades," Corey explained, turning the screen so they could see. "Whenever there's a major development project, the same thing happens. Black families get hit with code violations, property tax reassessments, even criminal charges. Then foreclosures follow. By the time construction starts, the neighborhood's cleared, and the properties always end up in the hands of the same development companies." Anita added, "Shell corporations tied to city council members, the police chief's brother-in-law, and the mayor's golf buddies." Malcolm spread the documents across the desk, creating a timeline. "Show me everything you have on the most recent cases." For the next hour, they pieced together the puzzle. Corey's notes revealed a tangled web: judges rubber-stamping evictions, bank officers speeding foreclosures, and police executing swift evictions before families could appeal. "Here's what I don't understand," Corey said, pointing to a recent foreclosure notice. "The Williams family, they had their house paid off. No mortgage, no liens. How did the bank foreclose on a free and clear property?" Malcolm examined the document carefully. "Look at the signature date, March 15th, 2023, but Mrs. Williams died in February." "Exactly," Corey said, eyes lighting up. "Someone forged her signature after she passed. Her children tried to fight it, but the judge wouldn't even look at the death certificate." Anita checked her watch. "The county clerk's office opens at 1. If we hurry, we can pull the original property records before anyone notices." Malcolm gathered the files carefully, organizing them in his briefcase. "Sai, can you access property tax records? See who's paying taxes on these now?" "Already on it," Corey nodded, typing rapidly. "Most are listed under numbered LLCs, but I've got a contact in the tax assessor's office who might help us trace ownership." They prepared to leave. Anita locked the file cabinet and drew the blinds. "We need to be careful," she warned. "The clerk's office has security cameras. They'll know we were here." "Let them see," Malcolm said, pulling on his trench coat. "Sometimes the best way to catch a snake is to make it think you don't know where it's hiding." As they walked toward the door, Corey slung his laptop bag over his shoulder. "You know they'll try to stop us, right? These people have everything to lose, and we have everything to gain." Anita's voice was firm. "Our community, our history, our homes." Malcolm checked his watch. 12:45 p.m. The county clerk's office closes at 4:00. That gives us 3 hours to find what we need. The county clerk's office sat in a squat brick building, untouched since the 1970s. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Malcolm, Anita, and Corey approached the front desk. The clerk, Mrs. Pearson, a thin woman with graying hair, looked up and tensed immediately. "Can I help you?" she asked, fingers nervously fidgeting with a pen. Malcolm stepped forward, voice gentle but firm. "We need to review some property records from the past 5 years, public documents." Mrs. Pearson's eyes flicked to the phone on her desk. I'll need to check with my supervisor." "That won't be necessary," Anita said, placing her city council ID on the counter. "As you know, these are public records. We have the right to view them." The clerk hesitated, then nodded quickly. "The archive room is through that door. Please sign the visitor log." They followed her down a narrow hallway lined with filing cabinets. The archive room smelled of old paper and dust. Metal shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, packed with property records, deeds, and tax documents. "Everything's organized by year and street," Mrs. Pearson explained nervously, wringing her hands. "I'll be at my desk if you need anything." As soon as she left, Corey pulled out his laptop. "I'll start with the most recent cases. The Williams property should be in the 2023 files." Malcolm noticed the security camera in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. "Work fast," he urged. We don't have much time before word gets out." They split up, each taking a different section. Anita focused on tax records, Malcolm on property deeds, and Corey on foreclosure documents. The only sounds were shuffling papers and occasional whispered discoveries. "Got something," Anita said after 20 minutes. "Look at these tax assessments. Properties in black neighborhoods suddenly jumping 300% in value right before foreclosure proceedings begin." Malcolm examined the papers. Same assessor's signature on all of them, Judge Patterson's wife. "Here's more," Corey added, spreading documents on a dusty table. "Deed transfers with impossible dates. This one shows Mrs. Williams signing over her property 3 weeks after her funeral." Malcolm's trained eye caught movement through the glass door. 2 men in civilian clothes, Officers Rickman and Hardy, were talking to Mrs. Pearson at her desk. She pointed toward the archive room, her face pale. "We've got company," Malcolm murmured. "Anita, start taking photos of everything. Corey, back up what you can." Anita quickly photographed document after document. Corey inserted a USB drive, fingers flying over the keyboard as he saved digital copies. The evidence was damning. Property deeds with forged signatures, backdated notices, tax liens filed without proper documentation, all connected through shell companies tied to town officials. "These companies," Malcolm said, pointing to a series of LLCs, "all registered to the same address, Chief Dalton's brother-in-law's law office. And look who notarized everything," Anita added, the mayor's secretary. "Same stamp we found earlier." The officers were closer now, pretending to read bulletin board notices in the hallway. Malcolm could feel their eyes through the glass. "Time to go," he said quietly. "Pack up naturally, don't rush." They gathered their notes carefully, trying not to draw attention. Corey saved his final files and pocketed the USB drive. Anita's phone was full of photos, safely uploaded to cloud storage. As they stepped into the hallway, Officer Hardy suddenly appeared, bumping hard into Corey. "Oh, sorry there," he said with a smirk, his hand brushing Corey's jacket pocket. Corey stumbled, catching himself against the wall. When he straightened, his face went tight. The USB drive was gone. "No problem, officer," Malcolm said smoothly, placing himself between Corey and Hardy. "We were just leaving." Officer Rickman blocked their path, arms crossed. "Find anything interesting in there? Just public records?" Anita replied steadily, "Available to any citizen who asks." They pushed past the officers, feeling hostile eyes on their backs. Mrs. Pearson stared at her computer screen, refusing to look up as they passed. Outside, the afternoon sun was blinding after the dim archive room. They walked quickly to their cars parked far apart. "They got the drive," Corey said, voice tight with anger. "All the scanned documents, my notes, everything." "Not everything," Anita assured him, patting her phone. "I backed up most of it." "And you said you have files at home?" "Yeah, on my personal computer. Not as complete, but enough to start with." Malcolm watched the officers emerge from the building. Hardy tossed the stolen USB drive in his hand with a satisfied grin. "Let's meet at my house in an hour," Malcolm said quietly. "We need to plan our next move carefully." They separated, heading to their own vehicles. Malcolm waited until Anita and Corey drove away before starting his car. In his rearview mirror, he saw the officers watching, probably thinking they'd won this round. They didn't know this was just the beginning. Corey's apartment was a small one-bedroom above a laundromat, walls vibrating with the hum of dryers below. Malcolm paced the cramped living room, his trench coat swishing as he turned. Evening light filtered through dusty blinds, casting long shadows over scattered papers and open laptops. "Most of my research is still here," Corey said, gesturing to his computer. "They got the fresh evidence, but I've been tracking these cases for months." Anita sat on a worn couch, scrolling through photos on her phone. "The property records we found today connect at least a dozen foreclosures to the same shell companies." Malcolm stopped pacing, studying a wall where Corey had pinned newspaper clippings and sticky notes in a complex web. "We need to move fast. They know we're onto them now." The room smelled of cold coffee and takeout, evidence of long nights spent digging through records. A police scanner crackled quietly in the corner, a habit Corey picked up after too many close calls with local law enforcement. Look at this pattern, Anita said, spreading photos across the coffee table. Every property they targeted was owned free and clear. Most of these properties had been passed down through generations. Malcolm leaned in to examine the documents when his phone buzzed. Mrs. Willis's name lit up the screen. "Edna," he answered, stepping away from the others. Her voice was low, urgent. "Malcolm, baby, listen carefully. You've got a snake in your garden. Not everyone showing friendship means you well." "What do you mean?" Malcolm's spine stiffened. "Can't say more. Just watch your back and be careful who you trust." The line went dead. Malcolm stared at his phone, his mind racing through possibilities. Before he could share Mrs. Willis's warning, heavy footsteps thundered up the outside stairs. "Police, open up." Corey jumped to his feet, face paling. The back door burst open, wood splintering around the lock. Officers flooded in, weapons drawn. Malcolm recognized Rickman and Hardy among them, both looking far too pleased. "Everyone on the ground!" Hardy shouted, waving his gun. "Now!" Malcolm raised his hand slowly, years of FBI training keeping him calm. "What's the meaning of this?" Rickman shoved a paper at him. "Search warrant. Mr. Johnson here is suspected of stealing confidential county documents." "That's ridiculous," Anita protested, but an officer roughly pushed her to her knees. The officers began ransacking the apartment, overturning furniture, dumping drawers, yanking books from shelves. One knocked Corey's laptop to the floor, cracking the screen. "Hey!" Corey lunged forward but was slammed against the wall, his hands wrenched behind his back. "Resisting arrest?" Hardy smirked, snapping handcuffs tight. "That's going to cost you extra." Malcolm watched helplessly as years of investigative work were destroyed, papers scattered and trampled under muddy boots. His jaw clenched as he saw Hardy pocketing a thumb drive with a wink. Anita's phone chimed. Her face went pale as she looked at the screen. Malcolm caught a glimpse of a photo, her teenage son's face clearly visible in what looked like surveillance footage from a convenience store robbery. Another text followed, "Back off or your son goes down for good." She met Malcolm's eyes, terror and rage warring in her expression. He shook his head subtly. "Don't react, not now." "Corey Johnson," Rickman announced theatrically. "You're under arrest for theft of county property, interference with an investigation, and resisting arrest." They marched Corey down the stairs, not bothering to be gentle. His head hit the door frame with a loud thud that made Malcolm's fists clench. From the window, Malcolm watched neighbors gather, witnessing Corey being shoved into a squad car. His journalist's notepad fell from his pocket. An officer crushed it under his boot, grinding it into the pavement. Anita's phone buzzed again. She stared at it, hands trembling, then showed Malcolm the screen. More photos of her son, clearly placing him at different crime scenes. The message was clear. They could destroy him whenever they wanted. The police cars pulled away, sirens silent, leaving behind a destroyed apartment and shattered evidence. In the heavy silence, Malcolm could still hear the dryers humming below, an oddly normal sound after such violence. He surveyed the wreckage of Corey's home, papers everywhere, broken furniture, smashed computers. But his eyes caught something the officers missed, a loose floorboard beneath the overturned desk, slightly ajar. Before he could move toward it, Anita's phone chimed one last time. She didn't need to read it aloud. The message was written all over her face. They were all being watched. The price of continuing this fight would be paid by those they loved most. The streetlights cast long shadows as Malcolm walked the empty streets of Cypress Bayou, his brown trench coat billowing in the cool night breeze. His footsteps echoed off old brick buildings and shuttered storefronts with fading paint. At night, the town felt different, more honest about its secrets. Malcolm pulled out his phone and scrolled through contacts until he found Agent Sarah Chen's number, his trusted right hand at the bureau for 15 years. The phone rang 3 times. "Malcolm." Chen's voice was alert despite the late hour. "Everything okay?" "Sarah, I need your help." He kept walking, eyes scanning the darkness. "Things are worse than we thought down here. Systematic corruption, police, city officials, property theft. They just arrested a journalist who was helping me investigate." "Jesus." Papers rustled on her end. "Give me details." Malcolm outlined everything: the false arrest, the bugs, the attacks, the blackmail. "They're organized, Sarah. This goes deep. I need you to quietly put together a task force, but keep it off official channels. We don't know how far this reaches." "Consider it done. More typing. I'll have a team ready within 48 hours. Just stay alive until then." "We will. And Sarah, watch your back. These people have connections." He ended the call and turned onto his street. Most houses were dark, except a few porch lights casting yellow pools in the night. Something felt wrong. The air crackled with tension. Suddenly, headlights blazed behind him, engine roaring. Malcolm spun around just in time to see a pickup truck speeding straight at him. He dove aside, rolling across Mrs. Willis's lawn as the truck mounted the curb where he'd been standing. The vehicle skidded to a stop, tires tearing up the grass. 3 men in ski masks jumped out, gripping baseball bats and metal pipes. They spread out, surrounding him with purpose. Malcolm rose slowly, hands raised. "You really don't want to do this." The largest attacker swung his bat, but Malcolm stepped inside the arc, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting sharply. Bones snapped. The bat clattered to the ground along with a howl of pain. The second man charged with a pipe. Malcolm blocked with his forearm, wincing at the impact, then countered with a precise strike to the throat, following with a sweep that sent the attacker sprawling into the mud. The third man hesitated, then charged. Malcolm used his momentum against him, redirecting him into the truck's hood with a sickening thud. A wallet fell from the man's jacket pocket. "FBI, drop your weapons!" Malcolm's voice cut through the night, authority ringing in every syllable. The first man clutched his broken arm, scrambling backward. The second gasped for air in the mud. The third managed to stagger up and sprint to the driver's side. The truck roared to life, tires spinning wildly in the torn grass. The other 2 attackers stumbled after it, leaving their weapons behind. Malcolm let them go, focusing instead on the wallet lying in the mud. His ribs screamed as he bent to retrieve it. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye where the pipe grazed him. The wallet was expensive leather, barely scuffed from the fall. Inside, he found a driver's license. Deputy Mayor Thomas Green. Pain shot through his leg as he limped toward his house. Every breath hurt. His trench coat was torn and muddy, spattered with blood, his and theirs. The porch steps felt like climbing a mountain. Inside, Malcolm locked the door and drew the curtains. He made his way to the bathroom, wincing at his reflection in the mirror. The cut wasn't deep, but would need cleaning. His knuckles were raw, and dark bruises were already forming along his ribs. He opened the medicine cabinet and found an old first aid kit. As he dabbed antiseptic on his wounds, his hands remained steady despite adrenaline still coursing through his veins. His FBI training had kicked in automatically during the fight, muscle memory taking over when it mattered most. Malcolm pulled off his ruined trench coat, draping it over the shower rod. The wallet sat heavy in his pants pocket, a solid lead at last. Deputy Mayor Green would have some explaining to do. In the kitchen, he filled a bag with ice for his ribs. The house creaked and settled around him, familiar childhood sounds now ominous. He sank into a kitchen chair, body aching, studying the ID in the wallet. Green's smiling photo stared back, oblivious to how this small plastic rectangle would soon upend his world. Outside, a dog barked in the distance. Car tires crunched on gravel. Malcolm sat in the dark, holding his ice pack, waiting for his breathing to slow. The wallet represented something bigger than one corrupt official. It was proof the rot went all the way to the top. As the sun crept over Cypress Bayou's horizon, painting the sky pink and orange, Malcolm sat in a corner booth at May's Diner, his coffee untouched. Every movement sent jolts of pain through his ribs. His face bore the marks of last night's fight, a butterfly bandage above his eyebrow, dark bruises blooming along his jaw. The bell above the door chimed. Anita Rhodes entered, looking exhausted. Her usually pristine blazer was wrinkled, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She slid into the booth across from Malcolm, hands trembling slightly as she reached for the coffee pot. "You look like hell," she said quietly, pouring herself a cup. "You should see the others." Malcolm pulled out Deputy Mayor Green's wallet and placed it between them. "One of them left us a present." Anita's eyes widened as she examined the ID. "Thomas Green. He's been pushing those urban renewal projects, the ones forcing black families out of their homes. She leaned back, running a hand through her hair. Any word on Corey? Malcolm shook his head. They're holding him without bail, accusing him of stealing confidential documents. He winced, shifting in his seat. Your son? Nothing. Her voice cracked. The photos they sent, they staged it perfectly, made it look like he was breaking into the high school. She gripped her coffee cup tighter. He's just 17, Malcolm. Never been in trouble a day in his life. The morning waitress approached, but Malcolm waved her away politely. He pulled out his phone and showed Anita a string of text messages. I contacted Carmen Rodriguez at the Washington Post. She's ready to run the story. Police brutality, corruption, systematic displacement of minority homeowners. All of it. That's not enough. Anita reached into her bag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. So I brought insurance. Her hands shook as she slid it across the table. Internal memos, backdated permits, emails between Green and developers. They'll end my career for this, but I don't care anymore. Not after what they did to my boy. Malcolm carefully tucked the envelope into his jacket. I've got backup coming too. Called in a favor from the Bureau. A task force is quietly assembling. They'll be here soon. The diner's door chimed again. Both Malcolm and Anita tensed, but it was just an elderly couple shuffling to their usual table. The scent of bacon and fresh coffee filled the air, a strange contrast to the heaviness of their conversation. Something's happening, Malcolm whispered, lowering his voice. Since last night, I've gotten dozens of messages. People coming forward, sharing stories, evidence. The dam's breaking. He showed Anita his phone, photos of forged documents, videos of police harassment, voice recordings of threats to homeowners. Each message a sign of growing courage. This one's from a clerk at City Hall, Malcolm said, scrolling. Proof of Green doctoring property records for 5 years. This one's from a former officer who witnessed the chief taking bribes. And here, a developer with recordings of planning meetings that were really shakedowns. Anita's hands stopped trembling, a fierce light sparking in her eyes. They thought they could bury this forever, that we'd just take it like before. Not this time. Malcolm sipped his cold coffee. Rodriguez is running the story tomorrow. National coverage. Once it breaks, state and federal investigations will follow. They won't be able to hide anymore. The morning sun streamed through the diner windows, making Malcolm's bruises more visible. A few patrons glanced, then quickly looked away when their eyes met his. We need to be careful, Anita whispered. These people won't roll over. They'll fight harder than ever. Let them, Malcolm said, his voice steel. We've got truth and numbers. Every person who speaks up makes us stronger. His phone buzzed. Another message, then another. The trickle of witnesses was becoming a flood. People tired of fear, inspired by those who stood first. The lunch crowd filtered in. Malcolm and Anita kept their voices low, reviewing documents, coordinating plans, preparing for what was coming. Decades of injustice hung heavy between them. At sunset, Malcolm was reviewing whistleblower evidence when his phone lit up with a new message. Anonymous. Town hall tomorrow. Show what you've got. The world will be watching. That night, lying awake, Malcolm stared at water stains on his ceiling. His body ached from the fight, but his mind was clear. Everything, the wallet, Anita's documents, whistleblower evidence, was building to this moment. Tomorrow would change everything. The evening sun cast long shadows through Cypress Bayou's town hall windows. Every wooden bench creaked under the weight of a packed crowd, shoulder to shoulder. Camera crews lined the back wall, their red lights blinking like watchful eyes. The air conditioning struggled against the heat of too many people in too small a space. Malcolm adjusted his brown trench coat, hiding a wince as bruised ribs protested. Beside him, Anita clutched a thick folder, her face set with determination. Corey Johnson, released just hours ago, showed jail's marks, stubble, dark circles, but his journalist's notebook was already out, pen ready. Ready? Malcolm whispered. Anita nodded. Born ready. They entered through a side door, but heads turned anyway. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Willis in the front row gave them a slight nod. Behind her, Thomas Green, arm in a cast, shifted uneasily. Mayor Wallace Sutter stood at the podium, his usual smooth charm strained. Now, folks, let's maintain order. This emergency session addresses certain unfounded allegations. Point of order. Malcolm's voice rang clear through the packed room. He stood, straightening his tie. I believe public comment is first, and I have something to say. The mayor's face tightened. Mr. Everett, this isn't Dr. Everett, Corey called out loud enough for cameras. Or should we say, Director Everett of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The room erupted in murmurs. Camera flashes popped like lightning. Malcolm walked steadily to the center aisle, each step measured. Mr. Mayor, he said, I've prepared a presentation on property rights, police conduct, and the systematic displacement of black families in Cypress Bayou. He held up a USB drive. I believe the projector is ready. Before Sutter could object, Anita plugged in the drive. The first image filled the screen, a map of their town with dozens of properties highlighted in red. These are the homes, Malcolm said, voice carrying to every corner, seized through fraudulent means over the past 5 years, forged signatures, backdated notices, illegal evictions. He clicked to the next slide, emails between the mayor's office and local developers. Here's how it worked. Chief Dalton, red-faced, stood. This is slander. I won't allow it. You don't have a choice, Malcolm replied, producing a court order. Federal investigation. Chief, your jurisdiction ended the moment you tried to arrest me on my own property. The next slides revealed dozens of police reports, documenting harassment of black homeowners. Then came the audio recordings, Green's voice, clear as day, discussing which families to target next, the mayor laughing about urban renewal. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some cried out, recognizing their own stories. Mrs. Willis stood, voice trembling but resolute. They did this to my sister's family, forced them out after 50 years. Others joined in, a chorus of long-suppressed truths finally breaking free. Malcolm raised his hand for silence. But the most damning evidence comes from your own people. He nodded toward the back, where 3 town clerks stood. These brave individuals documented everything, every forged document, every illegal order, every bribe. The mayor lunged for the microphone. This meeting is adjourned. Officers moved forward but stopped short. The back doors swung open as men and women in FBI windbreakers filed in, positioning themselves around the room. Malcolm's FBI badge gleamed as he held it up. I don't think so, Mr. Mayor. This isn't just a town hall meeting. It's the start of a federal investigation into corruption, civil rights violations, and criminal conspiracy. Anita stepped forward, voice strong, and a class action lawsuit. Every family you stole from is named. Every dollar will be repaid. Corey raised his phone, live streaming to every major news network. No one can bury this story now. The crowd rose, applause thundering through the room. Chief Dalton's face had drained of color. The mayor gripped the podium, knuckles white. Malcolm clicked to the final slide, a simple list of names, families who lost their homes. Their stories will be heard. Their property will be restored. His eyes locked with the chief's, then the mayor's. Those responsible will face justice. More people stood, sharing their stories. Reporters scribbled, cameras rolled, and the truth, long suppressed, filled every corner of the room. Malcolm gathered his documents, nodded to Anita and Corey. Together, they walked toward the exit, the crowd parting before them. Their footsteps echoed on the wooden floor amid rising applause. Chief Dalton clenched his fist, but he couldn't stop what was happening. Not anymore. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of his defeat. Later, Malcolm gripped his steering wheel, driving through Cypress Bayou's dark streets. His trench coat folded beside him, sweat dampening his collar despite the cool night air. Streetlights cast yellow pools on empty roads as his mind raced through the day's events. His phone buzzed, a text from Anita. Be careful, they're desperate now. Before he could react, blinding headlights filled his rearview mirror. A black SUV roared out of nowhere. Malcolm pressed the accelerator, but the SUV slammed into his rear bumper, jolting him forward, seatbelt cutting into his chest. "Not here," he muttered, fighting for control. The SUV rammed him again, harder this time, his car fishtailed, tires screeching on asphalt. Malcolm battled the wheel, every bit of FBI defensive driving training kicking in. The SUV pulled alongside, tinted windows rolled down. He glimpsed ski masks in the darkness, then the metallic glint of gun barrels. The first shots shattered his driver's side window. Glass sprayed across his face as he ducked, yanking the wheel hard right. Bullets punched through metal and upholstery. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled the air. His car slammed into a curb, airbags exploded white. Through the chaos, Malcolm saw the SUV screech to a stop, blocking the road ahead. 4 men jumped out, weapons raised. Malcolm didn't hesitate. He kicked open his door and rolled out, staying low. More shots cracked through the night. One bullet clipped his left arm, burning through his shoulder. He scrambled behind a parked car, blood soaking his white shirt sleeve. "Get him!" a voice shouted. "The boss wants proof!" Malcolm sprinted between houses, dress shoes slipping on wet grass. He vaulted a fence, landing hard in a backyard. Dogs barked, lights flicked on in windows. He heard his pursuers crashing through bushes behind him. Another fence, another yard. His arm throbbed, leaving a trail of blood droplets. Malcolm's breath came in ragged gasps as he pushed through the pain. He'd survived worse in the field, but he was older now, and these weren't trained operatives he could outmaneuver. These were desperate men with nothing left to lose. A bullet splintered the fence beside his head. Malcolm dove behind a children's playset, heart pounding. He needed to think. His foot caught a garden hose. He stumbled, rolling across damp earth. When he tried to get up, his injured arm gave out. Blood loss was making him dizzy. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness. The footsteps were getting closer. Malcolm spotted a shed tucked at the back of the nearest house. Half crawling, he reached the door. It was locked, but the wood was old. One solid kick shattered it open. Inside, he pressed himself between a lawnmower and stacked flower pots. His fingers trembled as he pulled out his phone, leaving bloody smears on the screen. The FBI had a special emergency code, 4 numbers that would trigger immediate help. If only he could send it. Footsteps crunched on gravel outside. Malcolm held his breath, typing the code with agonizing slowness to avoid any noise. "Check the shed!" a gruff voice growled. Malcolm hit send just as a flashlight beam sliced through gaps in the wooden walls. His vision blurred. The blood loss was worsening. He tried to apply pressure to his wound, but his fingers felt numb and clumsy. Dogs started barking wildly next door, then another joined in. "Cops!" someone hissed. "They're coming from both directions!" The footsteps retreated. Car doors slammed nearby. An engine roared to life and faded away. Malcolm sagged against the wall, consciousness flickering. Sirens wailed, growing louder. Red and blue lights painted the shed's interior in strobe flashes. He heard car doors opening, voices shouting, but it all felt distant now. The shed tilted and spun around him. His phone buzzed wildly. Messages from Anita, Corey, his FBI contact. Breaking news alerts accusing him of a criminal past, fabricating claims about the town hall. The mayor's office was already spinning its story. Malcolm's head dropped to his chest. Blood had soaked through his shirt, dripping onto the dirt floor. The siren sounded muffled, underwater. His eyelids grew impossibly heavy. "Still here," he whispered, fighting to stay awake. Still. But darkness was winning. The last thing he saw was the shed door casting long shadows in police lights. Then everything faded to black. Malcolm's eyes fluttered open to harsh fluorescent lights and the steady beep of medical monitors. His left arm throbbed beneath thick bandages. Cold metal pressed against his right wrist, handcuffs securing him to the hospital bed rail. 2 stern-faced FBI agents stood guard at the door, backs turned. Through the window, Malcolm saw a crowd of reporters and camera crews camped in the parking lot below. Equipment vans formed a maze of satellite dishes and cables. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over their expectant faces, waiting for news. "Welcome back," a familiar voice said softly. Malcolm turned to find Anita Rodas sitting beside him. Dark circles rimmed her eyes, but she managed a tired smile. She wore the same clothes from the town hall meeting, wrinkled from sleepless nights. "How long?" Malcolm's voice was rough. 2 days, Anita replied, pouring water. You lost a lot of blood. The doctors aren't sure. She helped him take a sip through a straw. The water felt like heaven on his parched throat. The local police tried to arrest you while you were unconscious, she continued, voice tight with anger. But the FBI stepped in. They've been guarding you around the clock. Malcolm nodded toward the handcuffs. Then why these? Mayor Sutter's last attempt to save himself, Anita said, her expression hardening. He's claiming you're a danger to the community. They're trying to destroy your credibility. The smear campaign started right after the shooting. They call you a fraud, a criminal, anything to discredit what you revealed at town hall. Malcolm closed his eyes, taking it in. Corey, he's okay. They ransacked his apartment again, but he wasn't there. Staying with friends, still writing. The story's gone national. Every major network is covering it. Anita reached into her purse, glanced at the FBI agents still focused on the hallway. Carefully, she slipped something small and black beneath Malcolm's pillow. While you were out, we kept gathering evidence, she whispered. This recorder has everything. Confessions from clerks who forged documents, phone calls between the mayor and developers, police radio chatter targeting specific homes, plus testimony from 3 officers ready to turn on Chief Dalton. Malcolm felt the recorder's shape against his hand. They'll try to stop us from releasing it. They already are. The mayor's office got a court order blocking any unverified allegations from publication, Anita added. But they can't stop a live broadcast, and they can't touch you now, not with the whole country watching. As if on cue, a fresh wave of camera flashes erupted outside. More reporters arrived, drawn by rumors the FBI director was about to speak out. Malcolm pressed the call button. When a nurse appeared, he said clearly, I'd like to hold a press conference, right here, right now. The next hour was a blur of activity. Despite protests from his doctors, Malcolm insisted on sitting up in bed. He kept his hospital gown but draped his signature brown trench coat over his shoulders. Damaged, blood-stained, a powerful symbol of the attack he'd survived. News cameras crowded the room. Microphones bristled like metallic flowers around his bed. Local stations fed live coverage to national networks. Millions were watching. Malcolm's fingers found the recorder beneath his pillow. His arm ached. His head felt light from medication, but his voice was steady as he began. 2 days ago, I was shot for exposing corruption in Cypress Bayou. Today, I finish what I started. He pressed play. The room fell silent as voices filled the air. The mayor discussing kickbacks, Chief Dalton ordering illegal surveillance, officers laughing about forged eviction notices. Malcolm played it all. As he spoke, FBI agents moved swiftly. Teams with search warrants descended on City Hall and the police station. Computers were seized, files confiscated, decades of corruption dragged into the light. On his hospital TV, Malcolm watched the unfolding coverage. Reporters breathlessly narrated as federal agents led handcuffed officials to waiting vehicles. Chief Dalton came first, his face purple with rage as cameras flashed. Then Mayor Sutter, his expensive suit wrinkled, all traces of Southern charm gone. Officer Rickman cursed and fought as agents pushed him into a car. Social media exploded. Hashtags trended. More whistleblowers came forward, flooding tip lines with new evidence. The conspiracy unraveled live, broadcast worldwide. Across Cypress Bayou, people stepped onto their porches, watching history unfold. Cars honked in celebration. Some wept openly, decades of fear finally lifting. Others hugged neighbors, hope replacing resignation. From his hospital bed, Malcolm watched it all, handcuffed to the rail, but it no longer mattered. The truth was free. The late summer sun blazed on the courthouse steps as Malcolm Everett adjusted his trench coat. His arms ached beneath fresh bandages, but he stood tall among the crowd. Handmade signs bobbed above heads. Justice at last, our homes, our rights, and thank you, Malcolm. Federal agents in dark suits moved purposefully around City Hall, carrying boxes of files and computer equipment, evidence of decades of corruption being cataloged and preserved. Satisfied murmurs rippled through the townspeople. Never thought I'd see the day, Mrs. Willis said, dabbing tears. Those crooks walking like they owned us all. Now look at them. Malcolm squeezed her shoulder gently. It's everyone standing together who made this happen, not just me. The crowd parted as Anita Rhodes approached, head held high. A fresh council pin gleamed on her lapel, reinstated just that morning after a unanimous vote by the Emergency Oversight Committee. The shadows under her eyes had faded, replaced by quiet triumph. The first housing restoration orders just came through, she announced, holding a stack of papers. 23 families get their deeds back today. More to come. Cheers erupted. Malcolm spotted familiar faces, people who'd lost homes, who'd been silenced, who'd finally found courage. They cried, hugged, lifted children onto shoulders. Corey Johnson pushed through, his press badge gleaming new, a national newspaper logo replacing his local credentials. His coverage earned him a promotion and a prestigious investigative journalism award. They're bringing out the former mayor now, Corey called, checking his phone. Federal marshals just arrived. The crowd surged as black SUVs pulled up. Former Mayor Sutter emerged in handcuffs, orange prison scrubs replacing his suit. Gone was his southern charm. He kept his eyes down as agents led him to a waiting vehicle. "Shame on you!" someone shouted. Others joined in, the years of anger finally finding voice. Malcolm raised his hand, and the crowd fell silent. "Let the justice system handle him now," he said firmly. "We're better than mockery." His words carried weight. The shouting died into determined silence as Sutter was driven away. One by one, other arrested officials followed, police chief, corrupt officers, clerks who forged documents. Each exit marked another piece of the old power structure dismantled. A group of FBI officials appeared, led by Malcolm's former deputy director. They carried boxes of materials, training manuals, oversight procedures, community policing guidelines. The Bureau was launching a pilot program in Cypress Bayou, a model for reforming rural law enforcement nationwide. "Director Everett," his deputy called. "The Attorney General sends his regards. He'd like you back in Washington next week to discuss expanding this initiative." Malcolm nodded, but his attention stayed with families receiving restoration papers from Anita. Children danced around their parents' legs as deeds were signed. Elderly couples wept quietly, reclaiming homes thought lost forever. Mrs. Willis touched his arm. "You did this, Malcolm. You came home and made things right." "We all did," he corrected gently. Every voice that spoke up, every neighbor who shared evidence, every officer who chose truth over corruption. This is community. The afternoon sun lowered as Anita stepped to the courthouse podium. The crowd hushed as she held up an ornate golden key. "This key once symbolized power some held over our town," she said, voice strong across the square. "Today, we reclaim it as a symbol of justice, truth, and the courage to fight for what's right." She turned to Malcolm. Dr. Malcolm Everett didn't just expose corruption. He reminded us who we really are, that one person willing to stand can inspire a whole community. Justice may be delayed, but it cannot be denied. Malcolm stepped forward as she held out the key. It caught the sunlight, gleaming like hope made real. "This key to Cypress Bayou stands for every door wrongly locked, every home stolen, every voice silenced," Anita continued. "In giving the key to Malcolm, we mark a new chapter, one where power serves the people, not the other way around." Malcolm accepted the key with his good hand, holding it high so everyone could see. Camera flashes sparked from the media section. Tomorrow, this image would be in newspapers nationwide, a symbol of change, possible anywhere corruption takes root. But for now, Malcolm looked out at the faces before him, not the cameras, headlines, or national significance. He saw Mrs. Willis wiping joyful tears, Corey scribbling in his notebook, Anita standing proud and vindicated, families holding their children close, finally feeling safe in their own homes. This was what justice looked like, not just laws, courts, and badges, but people standing together, refusing to back down, demanding better, a community healing. The key caught the light again as Malcolm lowered it, and for a moment, It seemed to glow with all their collective hope for the future. The morning sun painted golden streaks across freshly trimmed lawns as Malcolm stepped onto his front porch. The scent of barbecue and soulful music filled the air. His street had transformed. Gone were the suspicious glances and fearful silences. Instead, children raced bikes decorated with streamers while parents chatted across yard lines that once divided them. Malcolm adjusted his brown trench coat, a habit he couldn't shake even in the warmth. Every house gleamed with fresh paint, porches adorned with flowers and welcome signs. The Community Restoration Fund had worked miracles, but the real change was in the people themselves. Mrs. Willis waved from her porch swing, surrounded by young children hanging on her every word. She told stories, not just the painful past, but triumphs too. Spotting Malcolm, she beckoned him over. "Come here, young man," she called. Though Malcolm was well into his 50s, "These kids need to hear from you too." Malcolm crossed the street, stopping to shake hands and accept hugs along the way. Nearby, a group of teenagers set up speakers and microphones for the day's performances. Their t-shirts read, "Cypress Bayou Youth Leadership Program, Anita's newest initiative." "Director Everett!" Corey jogged up, camera in hand, press badge gleaming with a major network's logo. "Mind if I get a few interviews for the follow-up? People can't get enough of this story." "As long as you get the whole story," Malcolm replied, gesturing to the community around them. "Not just my part." Corey nodded, understanding. He'd grown from an ambitious reporter into a thoughtful journalist who knew the power of telling complete truths. He moved through the crowd, capturing moments big and small. Elderly couples slow dancing to Motown classics, children learning double Dutch from grandmothers, former rivals sharing recipes and laughs. The smell of grilled chicken and collard greens drew people toward long tables set up in the street. Church ladies competed over whose potato salad disappeared first. A massive pot of gumbo sparked friendly debate over its authenticity. Malcolm made his way to Mrs. Willis's porch, where children bombarded him with questions. "Did you really fight off bad guys? Were you scared? Can I be FBI too?" "The real heroes," Malcolm told them, "are the people who never gave up hope, like Mrs. Willis here, who watched over this neighborhood for decades, like your parents, who stayed strong even in the darkest times." Mrs. Willis dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. "We just needed someone to remind us of our strength," she said softly. "You did that, Malcolm. You came home when we needed you most." The music shifted to an old gospel tune as more people gathered to dance in the street. Malcolm spotted Anita directing volunteers, her council pin catching the sunlight. She'd turned her office into a community center, hosting weekly meetings where residents voiced concerns and shared ideas. "Everyone!" Anita called, tapping the microphone. The crowd quieted, turning toward her. "I want to announce something special. Thanks to settlement funds and generous donations, we're launching the Everett Fellowship for Young Leaders. Every year, 10 local students will receive full college scholarships and mentorship opportunities." Applause erupted. Parents hugged their children tighter, hope shining in their eyes. Doors once sealed shut were finally opening. Malcolm watched families who'd lost homes embrace neighbors who helped them fight back. The woman from 3 doors down who secretly documented police harassment now sat proudly with her grandchildren. The young couple who almost lost their house to forged papers taught their daughter to step dance on the sidewalk. Corey filmed it all, capturing the moment Mrs. Willis pulled Malcolm onto the dance floor. Despite his protests about his injured arm, she insisted he try the electric slide. His usually serious face broke into a rare full smile as he moved with the crowd. "See?" Mrs. Willis laughed. "Justice has got rhythm too." The day stretched on under a high, bright sun. Children played tag between adults' legs, their laughter sometimes drowning out the music. Older residents shared stories of the neighborhood's past, not just struggles, but joy and resilience. A banner hung between 2 trees. "Welcome home, Cypress Bayou." Below it, people danced, ate, and celebrated. The wounds weren't all healed. Some scars would take generations to fade. But in this moment, the community had found its voice again. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving. As afternoon turned to early evening, Malcolm watched from his porch steps. his brown trench coat draped over the railing, now a symbol of authority relaxed among family. Because that's what they'd become, not just neighbors, but a true family, bound by struggle and triumph. Stars began to peek out one by one. As dusk settled, Malcolm sank into his chair, feeling the gentle weight of contentment. Justice, he realized, wasn't just about laws and courts. It was about restoration, bringing light back to places long kept in shadow. Thanks for watching. Please share this story with your friends and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Meanwhile, I've handpicked 2 stories I think you'll enjoy. Have a great day.